name's Omi, and you're listening to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcast.
Welcome to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcasts. This is UC3P, our eponymously named podcast on policy, politics, and current affairs. My name is David Raban, and I'm the production manager for what we like to call the main page. Before we get into the episode, we want to take a step back and mention something about this time. UC3P mourns with the families of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the other black people who've died at the hands of police, white people, and the American system. UC3P is a nonpartisan organization, but part of our mission is to give a voice to the voiceless. And we have a tremendous sorrow, both for those who we can no longer speak to, and those that can no longer speak to us. At this moment, we want to take a moment of silence for us to reflect on their lives and what they meant to their families and loved ones. Thank you for taking that moment with us. Today, we're back with your favorite miniseries, Naked Love. In today's episode, producer Arjun Motta talked with a few people about love in the time of COVID-19. They talked about what it's like to live with another person, what to do when you're looking for a new relationship, and everything in between. A few notes before we get into it. First, we only have a couple more episodes for you this season, including the inaugural episode of our newest miniseries, Policy Jam. We're really excited to bring that episode to you, so please make sure to check it out. Second, we've just finished our academic year, and we have a new board. We're training them as we speak, and we can't wait for you to hear their voices. Finally, UC3P won a major award this year, Best Program of the Year at the Harris School of Public Policy. We couldn't have won this award without you, the listeners, and we just want to remind you that we really appreciate you. Now, let's get straight into the interview. Without further ado, here's Naked Love.
Hello and welcome to The Main Page. My name is Arjun Motta from UC3P. This is Naked Love 6. I'm joined today by Brianne Johnson.
Hello.
Dr. Jenish Patel.
Hello.
And his wife, Reema Rao-Patel.
Hi.
I want to give full disclosure. All three of my guests today are friends of mine from college, but given where we are with COVID these days, the Naked Love team thought that it would be interesting to talk to folks who are in various stages of relationships and hear from them how the pandemic itself, how quarantining, how self-isolating has affected their relationships, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'd love to hear from my guests just kind of on a basic level. What's your current living situation? Let's start off with Jenish and Reema.
Our basic living situation for Reema and I is a little bit of organized chaos. Before the whole COVID situation began, we were fortunate enough to find our first condo. So we are going through that major transition in life. We actually closed on April 1st, so not too long ago. And, it's been interesting because that was basically around the time when things really started shutting down here.
Right.
So we're getting ready to move over there, but at the same time, we don't have anything to really move over there. Can't buy new furniture. We're working on trying to get rid of stuff over here. So we have nothing in the condo. Our apartment has no couches. So we're sitting on a like 4-inch foam mattress on the ground. And that's kind of like our day bed, our desk. We eat dinner on it. Sometimes Reema falls asleep there at night and I just leave her there because it's.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add too is we've both been fortunate enough to be able to work from home during this time, and have been doing that since mid-March, basically, since things really started shutting down in Chicago. But Jenish works from home perpetually. Like, that's just what his role is. So this was like a milder transition for him in terms of like I was now entering his space.
Got it.
It was a bigger transition for myself. And then it was a huge transition when both of us sold our couches and our desk. So logistically, it's been interesting living here, but also just managing two people working from home is interesting too.
Got it. Brianne, what's your current living situation?
So mine is a little bit up in the air. I just graduated with my master's on Saturday.
Congratulations.
And thank you. Obviously a very weird time to do that. But so I used to have 2 roommates living here with me. I'm still in my apartment at school because I refused to move home for the sake of my sanity. But they've both left, so I'm living here alone. And I'll be here for another month and a half according to my lease. But from there, I don't really know because, I might have a job 2 months from now. I might not. And so I've just been exploring all of the different options. But mostly I feel just kind of suspended in time and space without really knowing kind of what's happening. I'm kind of taking it day by day.
What has COVID changed about, whether it was your relationship life, dating life, anything that might have looked different now as opposed to if we had never gotten into quarantine? We'll start with Brianne.
So the quarantine caught me at a really interesting time.
Okay.
I had just decided I was ready to start dating again when the quarantine hit or when, COVID hit. I had, ended a relationship around October and then had taken some time to be single. And then over spring break, I had a really good time and I was like, I think I'm ready to get back out there. But obviously it's just been really difficult because, dating apps already are so kind of low effort. And the idea of putting the time and energy into scheduling a video call with someone, like I barely have patience and energy for video calls with my friends. There's something just very exhausting about Zoom in general.
We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for inviting me. And so, I would say that I've had to be so much more intentional about, who do I actually want to meet up with? Who will fill my time in a way that feels productive? And that makes them sound like a project, but I don't know. It's not as casual as it would have been before. So it's been a slow go, a lot of navigation.
So when you say it's not been as casual as otherwise, do you mean like sort of that pursuing anything just feels like it has to be a little more serious to begin with? I do, yeah. And it's not like we're coming in and saying, oh, we're ready to get married. Because, I really only had plans to date casually because I was graduating this month and I figured, I'll be in Richmond for another month or two. I'll meet some people, make some friends, whatever. But what ended up happening was I met someone the week I got back from spring break, which was like just at the very start of quarantine. So admittedly, I wasn't taking it super seriously. I mean, of course, it was a serious issue, but people were still kind of figuring out their feelings around it and what was appropriate socially. And so I met someone that I really, really like. And what has been so fascinating has been we've kind of had to like have the exclusivity conversation earlier than we normally would have. Because, we're not in a committed relationship right now, but we only see each other. We've had to have that conversation over and over again in terms of we're not putting a label on this, but then again, I'm not on the apps. You're not on the apps. You're not seeing anyone else because we've decided to be socially distant. And in order to have the privilege to be together, we have to say no to other people. Do you think that, I guess, how different do you think that might have been, or do you think it would have developed at all differently if we had never gotten into quarantine?
I wonder that a lot. And it's a little bit of a concern that I have coming out of quarantine too. Because I wonder if I would have given him as much of a shot if it weren't for quarantine. Because now that I've kind of had to make so much effort to kind of just get to know him on this more intimate basis, because we can't really leave each other's houses. And so you're really just getting to know that person and what they're like when you're bored. And there's a lot of conversation because we can't just go drink a beer somewhere and distract ourselves. But I think that, I almost didn't go out on the second date just because I was there's some other people that I think are cute. Let's see about them. but having been forced together in some ways, I think has made me more decisive.
And then Jenish and Reema, Brianne mentioned getting to know her partner in a way that she probably wouldn't have if she hadn't gone into quarantine. For you guys have been together for 8+ years now, if I'm remembering correctly. Do you think you've learned anything new about each other because of quarantine, or been forced sort of to learn things about each other, or come to grips with things about each other even?
Yeah, it's funny. Even before you talked about doing this podcast, I think I just get very self-reflective when I'm at home. I keep saying to Jenish, I'm so surprised by how we're doing together during quarantine. And I'm so surprised by like the different ways we're sort of navigating this situation as a couple that I don't think we've like ever really done before in other situations in our relationship. Patience is not something that comes to me very easily. Like just in like interacting with loved ones specifically who you can take for granted. And it's been like a great learning lesson in that. But I actually surprised myself with how much more patient I've been. I think even though we've been together for like 8+ years, we spent 4 of those long distance. So I've always had this like weird insecurity of, I feel like we're so much farther in like the relation timeline that we're on, but I feel like there's so much missed time that we didn't get together at some of those like stages, like in your early 20s when you're really shifting and changing who you are, exploring different things. And so it's been really awesome to just like slow down and actually like get to know each other on a different level, which is, it sounds weird to say as like a married couple who's been together for almost a decade.
Right. I think, I don't know, I always imagined our life being married pre-kids and then, you know, if all things go well, then post-kids. And obviously I'm terrified of having kids. And I just imagine,
you can have that conversation if you want to.
Oh God. I would just imagine like at some point we're going to be at a point where like our relationship will have kids in it. And then we're going to wish like, wow, like all the things that we could have done or should have done, all the things that we didn't do when it was just the two of us. And we're learning to like just really enjoy this time together because we're like, wow, we're actually just forced to be stuck with each other in the same place at all hours of the day. And it's something that I don't want to take for granted. Like, it's actually nice. It's nice to have that time to do it.
So then you alluded to the time of being married prior to potentially having kids one day. Do you think in the macro sense, kind of looking bird's eye view, that this has pushed back any sort of large decision timelines around, I mean, not necessarily just kids, but just sort of what your roadmap was together for the rest of your lives almost, basically?
So, I mean, we haven't properly had the conversation about like even when we wanted to have kids and whether this has pushed that back. But I think both of us have sort of been alluding to that feeling of like, we have to make up for time that was lost in our pre-kids life.
I guess, Brianne, the question's a little bit different for you. Do you think in the long term, obviously you said you're looking for a job and that could change a lot of things. How does that shape how the way you're sort of approaching being in a no labels but exclusive sort of situation right now?
I think, and this is actually a conversation I was having with a friend yesterday, because she's in a similar spot where she met someone around this time, really likes them, but at the same time, we used to have big plans to move to New York together and like get started on our careers. And so now I'm in this weird in-between spot where things are starting to feel kind of serious with this person that I'm seeing, which is great. Like, I did not expect that at all. And it's been so healthy and comforting for me during this time that's really rocky. But now I wonder if I'll have to start asking myself how to prioritize that when it comes to, okay, when the quarantine lifts and the world picks back up and maybe hiring starts back up in New York City or Chicago, both places I want to leave Richmond for, what do I do about this relationship? I can't ask him to move for me. I unless if he wanted to, that's his decision, but I would never ask someone to do that. But I also don't want to lose him. And the relationship has started to make staying in Richmond a little bit more attractive, which is not something I would have ever considered. And this is so cheesy, but I've had to like really like live in the moment. And I'm someone who's very like future thinking. I'm constantly trying to plan for the future, but I literally can't. Like, for once, there is nothing I can plan for. There's nothing I can control, which is almost relaxed me in some ways, because it means that I literally can't worry about it, because worrying about it can do nothing. So, I mean, maybe that mindset has even allowed me to get closer to him, which is kind of a surprise aspect of everything that's happening. But we both agree to kind of like cross that bridge when we come to it. But it definitely weighs on me in terms of, do I continue opening